Hello, everybody. Welcome to our weekly Q&A discussion that we do every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific. You can learn more about it at aquaticstalk.com, where you can join our Zoom discussion so you can be part of the panel, or you can see where you can add your own questions in to contribute to the discussion. So we just take questions from some different sources. You can submit your own questions. Or we'll take stuff that we find from the Facebook group. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump onto the first question we've got here. David asks about saltwater pools. Does everyone find that there is need for regular adding of pH down all season? Anybody have experience with saltwater pools? So my understanding, go ahead, Christine.
Well, Tamarack was a saltwater pool, but I really honestly can't remember to answer that specific question.
Yeah. It was my understanding that saltwater pools basically create, a form of chlorine gas off of the electrolysis. So what happens is, in theory, that would bring your pH down itself, or it's fairly close to pH neutral. So I'm wondering if it's from bather load or from other, like if it's an outdoor pool, if it's getting more rain or something that's affecting that pH, depending on their source water also. I know some municipalities, depending on the time of the year, they pull from different source waters. And so, it can make a big difference in their makeup water. So I'm going to just go ahead and mark that one as answered. I'm trying something new. I might be breaking the Slido thing where I basically just keep kind of sliding the dates forward on it so it can keep all the questions that we don't get to. So I'm going to move this one up next. So Tony asks, does anyone have excessive sneezing from working at an indoor pool? Started a new job and have been sneezing all the time at work. Thoughts from the group?
I would, I'd be checking that HVAC system and figuring out what your air quality is, because I do remember that the city of Eugene had a pool that had one of those dome things, and they had a lot of employees getting congestion and different cold-like symptoms. And it also can be an allergy-related thing. Some people, are more sensitive to, if it's from the chlorine, if it's just them, it might be specific to them, but if it's everybody, then it's something to definitely check out. If you're getting the right ventilation in there and getting fresh air in.
Halfway want to ask where he moved to start the new job, because I did not have any allergies till I moved to Oklahoma. And
interesting.
Yeah. Everybody says, oh yeah, just Oklahoma, you get allergies. It's just, if you didn't have them before, you'll have them now. So we do, we follow the pollen alerts and stuff now, but he might check and see if it's related to that, even because I know WeatherBug puts out the pollen alerts.
Yeah. Kyle, any thoughts?
I've worked at multiple indoor pools. There have been instances where I go through a sneezing fit, but usually it has to do with the allergies of that season. So I would think it's allergens if they move to a new area.
Yeah. I've noticed as I've gotten, a little bit older, that I get a little more sensitive if the pH is low in the pool, because pool operator Joe likes to run low pHs. And if I get in the water a little bit, I notice I do get a little bit itchy sneezy. I think that might be the correlation that I've noticed sometimes, but definitely echoing what Christina said and Chelsea have said, check the pollen, check the weather, make sure your HVAC system is working great.
We also found that in our splash, in our first aid area, when we pulled the drawers that were under a table open, it was full of mold. And so that's another potential as well that could create a problem for somebody, especially if it's like in your office or some near there that you're having difficulties.
Yeah, I'll echo a sentiment of that. We've been having HVAC systems problem in our staff changing rooms, and we had a spell this summer where some swim lesson instructors were starting to get some rashes, and the pool, we were hammering the pool, trying to figure out what the heck was the problem. We went in and kind of took a look, trying to analyze the whole thing, and it turns out we were having some mold issues in our staff locker rooms. So once we cleared that up, we had the issues went away. So just a thought there. All right, can I do this? Nope. All right, so Jennifer asked about the pros and cons of having a 10 lane by 50 meter pool versus an 8 lane by 50 meter pool. I'll let the panel go first on thoughts, and then I'll chime in.
Well, I always vote if you're going to put a hole in the ground and you have the opportunity to have more water and availability for programming, go for it. Because you can have 8 lanes, you can have some of it dedicated to competitive swimming and some of it dedicated to exercise or lap swimming. Just my thought. If you're not in a budget crunch.
Right. I would say that my thought is, as long as you can get to a consistent width, because that gives you a lot more programming options. If your choices are go 10 lanes but a weird width, the pool I swam at in college was 25 yards wide by 50 meters long. And so that was really great for that type of training, because we could be swimming short course yards widths and had like 20 some odd lanes. But if we needed to go long course, we could switch the lines out and do long course practices. There were some comments in the Facebook group about potentially, having buffer lanes on the outsides, which is great for competitions. But really, I think if you can get a standardized width, whether it's 25 yards or 25 meters even, and then potentially also having like a movable bulkhead. If you're 25 meters wide, to have a movable bulkhead so you can go 25 yards and be able to get all the different competition courses.
I would also say just make sure you've got enough room around the outside of your pool, like for your walkway, because my pool built in 1960 has a very narrow walkway around my lane 4 all the way down to the far shallow end. Like it's maybe 3 foot wide. And then they built us a brand new warm water pool about 5 years ago, and they did the same thing. And it was like, what was the thought process here? Like, why do we have these, like, it's so narrow, it's so hard to walk around on those sides. Just, make sure you're accounting for like what kind of program you want to bring in for storage and stuff as well.
That's a great point. I know. Also, if you're building, a 50 meter pool, I'm assuming you're going to be trying to host competitions. Like that's usually goes hand in hand. Make sure you have enough room to not only have storage, but also for bleachers, to be able to have your adequate pathway and then room for your bleachers.
We don't have those at all in this pool.
Right?
It's sad.
It's
very sad.
Your pool is cute. I like it.
It's very cute.
It's just
cute is a nice word for it.
No, I shouldn't say that, and I don't want it to be condescending. I just think it's like,
no, it's not.
That's like meat and potatoes of aquatics right there, where you're it's close to the metal. You're right there with the people. There's not a lot of frills. It's great. It's where I've spent most of my career, and I love it.
It's a great little pool. I worked at a Y in Beckley, West Virginia, though, before I worked here, and they have a 6-lane pool, and their Y is kind of built into a hillside. I digress here, but
that's good.
You could see from it's like a 3-story building essentially. So the pool's in the bottom side, and then off the 2nd story was where the bleachers came out into this 6-lane pool. So you had this overlook, and so you could send swim lesson parents up there. You could have all your swim meet people were up there, like. So all your lanes and everything were during swim meets, they're very dedicated to just swim meet time, versus my tiny little pool. When they do hold swim meets there, it's a crap ton of folding chairs and parents with little children trying to run around, and it's a hot mess, and every single piece of equipment has to get moved off that deck into the hallways, into the sauna and steam room, like wherever we can shove stuff, we're shoving it. And so, and as we're looking at bringing in new programs, like I would love to get a paddleboard class going in there, and I have nowhere to store any of that stuff. So who knows?
Yeah. Deck space and storage space are huge.
Yeah.
Huge. All right. Great thoughts, everyone. All right. Chris asks, what have you used to clean your lane line, specifically the plastic discs and floats? I use just a light power washer and like a degreaser. Anyone else have any other experience?
We didn't clean ours. We just finally bought brand new ones.
Mhm.
It was time. I mean, I think eventually they build up a little bit of hard water stain on them, so you can't really acid wash them. But a light acid wash, I don't think could be horrible for them.
Yeah.
What I do see is not necessarily with pools, but with lakefronts. When you're dealing with lane lines at a lakefront, that's another hot mess to happen, and you're dealing with all the nastiness. So yeah, you're power washing those babies and soaking them in something to try and get all that nastiness off of them. But
Yeah, I've been in a situation where I probably use lane lines way longer than they should, and we keep replacing cables and keep replacing floats, and then we kind of piece it together as long as we can until we probably should just buy some new ones. That's where we're getting to now is we really need to start investing in buying some new lane lines because I can keep fixing them. I can keep I'll digress a little bit too because it's what's the qualifications? You always get that new lifeguard that's like, hey, have you ever made like Cheerio necklaces? Perfect, I got a job for you. Come on over here. Let's sit down. I got a perfect job for you to restring this lane line. So
see, and we finally just gave up because we kept talking about replacing all the pieces in the lane line, and we figured out the amount of time it was going to take to restring them, etc., and go through all the parts and pieces we had. It was just easier to drop $500 a lane line and make it happen.
Yeah.
So we finally did it.
Yeah. I know. I was thinking about that while we had 8 call outs on Monday across all of our positions in our facility. And so I was sitting on the lifeguard stand looking at our lane lines thinking, yeah, I need to just pull the trigger on redoing these. So all right, next question. I actually like this question. There's some good thoughts here. There was a group member that was asking about for ideas when talking to a parent who insists on changing their preschool, kindergarten age child on the pool deck. And the parent had some reactions of stop sexualizing my child and things like that. So any thoughts and feedbacks or just how you've handled that?
I think it depends on the age of the kid.
Yeah, they were like a
think that's-
preschool, kindergarten age child is what they were saying.
And so
I've really never seen anybody do it with that age. Go ahead, Christine.
I was just going to say, I mean, if you're at a beach type thing or something like that, you use a towel around them and you can change them. It's not easy, but I think that, I don't know, I'm surprised that somebody would want, if they're not doing that kind of method, would want to change them on the deck. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a little unclear, I think, from their question. And, assuming they're towel changing, like even then, try to find, I've seen places where we've tried to find like spaces for people to be able to do that if you don't have like a private or gender neutral restroom. I've seen like partitions, kind of like changing stalls that you would have at clothes stores where you put them up on the corner of your deck so you can take those little ones in, get them changed, get them out, especially, I have 2 daughters, and when I was taking them to the pool at different points, it was when they're just at that age where they're too old to come into the main locker room, but too young to send in by themselves, it's a little bit of a hassle. So I completely relate to that.
So we are fortunate enough to have family locker rooms. So we have individual bathroom with shower. So those are just gender neutral in that sense. But I would suggest that maybe to have the conversation with the parent and say, I don't know if I didn't see the post, so I don't know if this is what they said, but the times that I've seen it is parents have gotten out of the pool from a mommy and me class and then immediately changed their kid. And it's like, hey, you might want to rinse off the chlorine, just shower off. It's really, babies have little kids, especially, have much more sensitive skin than we do. It's going to dry their skin out. Like maybe go from that tack of like, I don't know what you normally do, but if you want to help make sure we keep our chemicals balanced, but you can do your part and make sure that your kid stays extra healthy and shower off. It'll also help the longevity of your swimsuits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And suggest the family locker room in that sense. Of course, we live in Oklahoma, so it's really quiet, conservative. You see the little kids, parents might change them directly on the pool deck, and I don't care because that's a mom with her baby. Versus I've really not seen, 3 years old and up, that parents are pretty good about taking them to a family locker room. But that would be my suggestion.
And it might be also just finding out what's uncomfortable about the locker room for this person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You might find out that there's an issue in there that you're not even aware of.
To have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know for real littles that are still, in swim diapers and whatnot, really try to push them away from the pool deck, because accidents happen and it ends up in the pool or it gets tracked into the pool. So we try to encourage them to have spaces all throughout the facility for them to be able to change kids that are in that boat. So all right, great. And then going on to our next question, Randy asks if anyone's had to lower their fitness standards to accommodate new candidates, and I'm guessing this is for lifeguarding. He's seen decreased swimming ability. Any thoughts from you?
We don't necessarily lower our standards. What we do is, so I've seen a lot of people talk about doing a lifeguard prep class. And a lot of Ys I see that do this, they basically charge $25 for the class. And it's about an hour-long swim strokes class, just trying to improve their swimming ability. Because YMCA versus Red Cross, I think Red Cross is still breaststroke and freestyle. And YMCA wants breaststroke, freestyle, side stroke, backstroke. And a lot of people, even swim team kids these days, don't know side stroke.
Right.
So when you're teaching, and so I've taught people on the fly, as they're taking the test, but it's so much more convenient to have that time ahead of time with them. I've also had kids come in that, they're just solidly built boys. They're, Mr. Muscle. So they sink like crazy and they don't have a lot of forward mobility in the water. So teaching them those strokes and saying, we're going to spend a little more time in the water just working on strokes. A lot of times they pass it. And I've only had to ever not pass one person. It's because a girl couldn't get down to the bottom no matter how many times I worked with her. And we had to have a cutoff point for that so that we could continue with the class. But I would suggest the swim stoke, the prep class, the lifeguard prep class, to maybe get some people in there swimming ahead of time. And then depending on your own personal time, how much time you want to invest in it. We've always run smaller classes. So I'm perfectly willing to spend a little bit extra time getting people swimming, especially with the lifeguard shortage right now. You just want to, I'm happy to take that extra time to help somebody get their strokes improved. And if it's going to help them be a better lifeguard, absolutely.
Agreed. I think, Christine, you talked about, a class and preparatory as options before in the past, and I think that's good. I know I'm not, we don't lower the standards, but like Chelsea said, we'll put more time into them. We, when we ran all through the spring last year, free lifeguarding classes once a month. These were Red Cross classes. And what we did was we actually pre-tested them before the first day of the class. So we had them schedule to come in, we would pre-test them and then get them, opportunities to continue to learn to swim and practice. At all the facilities I've been at, if you're signed up for a lifeguarding class, you basically get free admission to lap swim during that time. Because we want you to come in and practice. We want you to get in and refresh the skills, blow out the cobwebs and things like that if you're a former swimmer, or to get more refined if you haven't swam.
I think the other thing too is it's just, let's talk about basic fitness conditioning, because based on convenience and how we set up classes, obviously, ideally you're teaching a lifeguard class when you aren't having people in the water. So you're trying to smash it into a weekend, right? Mm-hmm. And you ask them to do, if you're not a swimmer on a regular basis and come in and do that physical activity hour after hour after hour, that's asking a lot. And I had it occur for, I had a swim candidate that was in her 40s,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it really made me realize it and think about it and go, really, did we plan this out to give them breaks, you know, in the water, come out and do lecture, in the water, come out and do lecture, and have those breaks? Because swim team are the only people that swim for 2 hours, right?
Right.
I would 100% agree with that, because when
Yeah.
I took my lifeguard test when I was 17, it was me and 5 other girls, and all those 5 girls were swim team girls, and they went bloop, 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 and they popped up out of the water, and I had not, it was January, I hadn't been in the water since the summer.
Right.
And I was a little Miss Struggle Bus there. And I remember he ended up being my boss later, Charlie, kind of looking at me like, I don't know about this kid. And I made it, but I wasn't pretty. You know,
Well,
it's a
you know,
different kind of endurance.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You know, and you
Yeah.
might lose somebody that's got the brains that you want on the stand and the ability to react and think ahead. And
Yeah.
at the same time, the endurance isn't there because they aren't in that conditioning program all along. So
Mhm.
it's kind of how you plan the class to make sure someone can be successful.
Yeah, I'm thinking hard. You know, I've you know, just because of pool space and stuff, and nuisance, we've kind of pushed to you know, the weekend or 2 to 3 day classes. But I'm wondering if we start looking more at the 1 day a week classes again for half a, you know, a 3 or 4 hour session. It's kind of a pain to schedule and to get everyone in, but for those that are weaker swimmers, you might be able to actually get them through and refine them. By the end of the class, they've kind of worked out everything and you've been able to give them some swim feedback. I don't know. All right. Somebody in the group, and I stopped putting in, I'll not enter a name if they enter a post anonymously question. Anyone recommend a certain type of resuscitation mask over others? I like the big donut style. Actually, you can see it behind me. I get mine from the lifeguard store. I know there's several other places that have them. I'm a big fan of this style, even though they're a little bit pain to get out of your resuscitate. You know, your hip packs, they stick out. But I found it's a lot. I used to be a little opposed, but I started playing with them more, and it's a lot easier to get seals in the water. How about you guys?
That's what I've used.
Yeah.
I just have the ones that come in that slightly triangular case.
Yeah.
And then they pop out and you put your little one-way valve on them. And then I also, every time I teach a CPR class, I have those little bitty keychain ones.
Mhm.
And I found ones on Amazon that actually say on them 30 to 1. And so I can hand them out as part of my class, so that everybody has one of those. And I always carry one with me wherever I go. I've been very, very fortunate to never, ever have to use one. But I think it's like my lucky charm, like carry it so you don't have to use it.
Right. Yeah. I've had both. And I've been transitioning into this style while I'm teaching, just because the only time I've ran into issues with them is the mannequins I have, the infant mannequins, they don't want to seal quite right. And I think that's because of the way the mannequin lungs work, not so much because of the design. It's just a little new. So, all right. Good question there. There's still a bunch. There was a bunch of questions this week. Last week, there wasn't nearly as many. So I'm hoping somebody else will get on there. If there's other people that are watching now, you can click on that little link and it'll let you add your own questions. This is a good one here. So Lori asked about starting blocks. What guidelines do you have for the use of starting blocks? I'm going to extrapolate a little bit, guessing during normal operations. Do you allow people to use them, and under what conditions?
So I think I commented on this one actually. We have cones on top of the diving blocks. So unless swim team is using them, the cones are on there. And I've had people take the cones off and go dive off of them. And then we have to say, I'm so sorry, you can't do that. And they're like, oh, I didn't know. And it's like, well, what did you freaking think the cone was for? Like, it's No. And so what I said, what really helped, because we don't really have it posted anywhere aside from on the cone now, I laminated a copy of our swim team logo that said underneath it, dive blocks are for swim team only, you know, please and thank you. And
Yeah.
those are taped to those cones. And so people have no excuse now because it's already on the cone. Like if you go to move the cone, it's like, oh no, it says right on there, it's swim team only. And the lifeguards are very well versed in knowing that it's swim team only. So they will not allow anybody up there.
Yeah.
They're too dangerous if you don't have the training to jump off of them properly.
Yep. I know best explanation I ever heard from one of my first pool director actually would talk about like, well, why can't we let people go off the blocks during recs when we let them go off the diving board? And it's like, well, because if you look at a diving board, it's got handrails and protection to get you out to where you're surrounded by 3 sides on water. And if you fall backwards, you're going into water. Whereas a diving block, you're surrounded by concrete on 3 sides. And if you go backwards, you're hitting the pool wall. So we say only under the supervision of facility coaches. We try to be kind of clear about like because we a pretty large facility and we get a lot of people coming, oh, I'm on swim team, I'm this and this and I'm a coach. It's like, well, great, but we need to make sure we go through all of our safety procedures and stuff with you before we let you use it if you're coming in off the street and just saying you're a coach. So that usually gets people pretty cool about it. So all right, I'll bump up this one. So Debbie asked about shade solutions for standing stations. It was an outdoor camp. She's not a fan of seated stations as people can doze. Any perspectives from the camp world?
So she's asking about shading or
like having shade for them?
Shade is awesome, especially in the Oklahoma sun. What we tend to struggle with, so the way they're set up at the docks at the Camp Classen, they have the lifeguard chair, and then they have those umbrellas that pop up. And you just kind of go to where the shade is. So if it's in the chair, you're sitting in the chair. And if it's if it's just out on the dock based on where the sun is hitting, you're probably standing out on the dock. But some of that is also how quickly you're rotating your people. So the lifeguards rotate every 15 minutes. The most they're standing in one spot or sitting in one spot is 15 minutes. They're always getting a new rotation, or they're getting, other things to do. So I think it's a combination of the two, but that's what they do at the camp. I do not have outdoor pools. So I think our local pool, the water park, also has lifeguard stands that have like full shade. And they also try and do like a 15 or 20-minute rotation. I think that's half the battle.
Yeah.
I think you need
and then hydration.
Keep people moving.
Yeah.
And the shorter rotation so they're not in the same spot in the sun. I mean, if you're at a camp situation, I could see maybe less than ideal. Even, there was a lot of talk of like take a bucket with concrete and just put an umbrella in it. That could potentially work. I could potentially even see using an easy up if you're in a standing station. The only issue that I'd have is make sure you get it high enough that it's not obstructing eyesight. But yeah, it's not too bad. I would say rotate, just like you said, Chelsea, get people moving quicker.
And I think if you have people dozing, you need to look at the switch time, for, like you were saying with the rotations. That it's kind of like different issues.
Right.
I don't think it's related. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's something I think is important, is like, what's the root issue here? It's not so much that your people are dozing. That's the symptom, because they've been sitting there too long.
And are they hydrating? Are they eating enough? Are they, so I actually pay a little extra out of my own pocket, and I have a stash of snacks in my office at all times. And we have ice pops in the freezer, so they can always get some, like those little treats that keep them alert and moving and stuff. Half of it is that these kids, they're partying late at night, it's summertime, they're up late, and then they come in the next morning, they're like, oh, I'm so tired. And it's like, well, what did you do? well, I didn't go to bed till 2. Well, that's half the battle.
Mhm.
You need to go to bed at a decent hour. Let's
Yeah.
start there.
Yeah.
Teaching them that stuff as well.
I love the idea of the snacks and try to encourage them to take snacks on their way out, especially treats and candy. It's kind of the conditioning of getting a reward at the end of their shift. This place is a happy place. I get my rewards at the end. It's like the Costco approach of feeding you cheap food at the end so you walk away happy. So, all right. We got that one answered. I think this was a good one that Thomas asked. Thomas asks, thinking back, and he's been on the panel a couple times. What are some things you wish you had better training on when you first started your aquatics career? Right? It's just so much different. I know even, from when you were doing it, Christine, and then I know even in the, the gap from, like when Chelsea and I's group kind of came through, it's just different. It's so different now than it used to be.
I think that what we probably all were lacking, I think I can speak to this, is that we all were strong in our aquatic skills. Well, in terms of, that's kind of how we got hired. It was based on our lifeguarding experiences and all of those things. Where we lacked was how to manage a team, how to build a team, how to encourage employees, so then we had to kind of learn that along the way by trial and error, and finding out you don't scream at people to do chem checks and things like that that you didn't learn the management skills right up front. It was based on yours because you had those unique skills that had to do with the water. So that probably would have been very helpful for me in the beginning to have more of that. And I learned from my managers coming up, but gosh, for the most part, I was pretty well left alone running the pools without management support for quite a long time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And as I got into a bigger organization that had trainings and things like that, that came on board. But it was trial and error up to that.
I would
Go ahead,
100%
Chelsea.
agree.
Yeah, I know for me, and I'm still working on this one as I'm getting into different boats. I tend to be a doer, and so delegating is hard. It's not that I don't, and I have to like continually remind myself, like, no, you need to delegate that. You need to delegate that. You need to get out of the way. Like, get out of the way of your staff of doing things. It's not because I don't think they can do it. I think it's wanting to support them and make sure that I'm there and that they don't get put in awkward situations. But there also is a point where I have to make sure that I'm like, nope, you can do this. I'm going to go back to my desk and do the facility diagrams that I need to do, and you can figure this out. So delegation is one that does not come natural to me. Kyle, so the question we just posed was, what do you wish, what are things that you wish you would have been trained better at when you were first starting into your aquatics career?
Hey, he has the same look on his face.
Yeah, I did.
Right? That we all had that same look. So don't.
Yeah. Where do you start? I mean, honestly, I feel like just having the knowledge of the amount that is involved with being an aquatics professional. I mean, it's when you come in, I feel like I was a little bit more prepared than most. But there was a lot of people that I feel like they're like, I didn't realize I have to do this. I didn't realize I have to do this. And there was things like that. I can't give specifics because I just remember my first 2 years just being a blur because of just the amount of things that I was having to understand and realize, oh, that's my job. Oh, okay, that's my job. So just being a little bit more aware of like just the word I'm looking for is escaping me, but just the sheer amount of stuff that is involved going into it would have been nice to mentally prepare for, and not just go in and go, oh, I just have to train lifeguards and schedule. So
Yeah. We joke about the other duties as assigned, but, I think about like one of my friends from Eastern Oregon was talking to me about, he was training a different, he's a rec coordinator during the off season, runs a big summer pool. And they were like training somebody new on the dry land rec side of things. And they're like, well, who do we call to sweep the gyms and stuff? It's like, well, here's a broom, bud, ready, go. This is you. We don't have a department to handle. It's your job to make sure things are ready to go for your coaches and everyone else. You don't know what you're going to walk into. Like, and that's the thing that I love about it is there's never 2 days are never the same. You can go from one thing to another. Sometimes it'd be nice to be able to do what I wanted to do for the day versus what I ended up doing. But then there's also that, that serendipity of the good things that play out and make a difference in people's lives. So, I think maybe just preparing people like you know what this might be actually is maybe boundaries and and how to set expectations.
yeah,
Like how to articulate, like we can do just about anything, but we also have to prioritize what we can do.
and knowing what can wait is a huge thing, I think.
Yeah. I think one of the things I learned from when the one year I worked for a YMCA, from the director there was like, or the CEO was, well, we can, that we don't say no to anything. We just say, well, we don't have the resources to do that right now. If you'd like to donate and support, we would be more than happy to explore that program, but we just don't have the resources right now to offer that.
And that's one of those areas of skill is learning how to deal with customers and the public, and how to handle complaints, and how to handle, situations when they're unhappy, all of those things in terms of doing that where it doesn't become well, like he did for you, you're not really saying no, but you're not really saying yes either.
Yeah.
No, it's a diplomacy. How's that?
Yeah.
Or diplomatic ways of getting your messages across.
Right. No, it's great. And I know I'm coming off of a blur 2-week period between a dog swim and everything else where it's just kind of a blur. I know yesterday, literally, I was at a meeting for the last bit of my day, and I was just like, I realized I am mentally done. I can't, like, I don't know what people said for the last 5 minutes. So it's good though to hear that we're all kind of on the same page of what do I wish I would have known, or what do we need to train people for better. So, all right. Kind of a little bit lighter question now. Do your facilities have a policy on wearing Apple Watches or smartwatches on duty? Kyle, do you guys have a policy?
Currently, we don't have anything written policy-wise. I'm kind of running it as a trial. I currently allow it. The watches. I just tell my staff that they need to be focused on the water and not be sitting there. Like if I start seeing this thing, that's when I get after them. So I'm doing it as a trial period, just to see how it goes, because there are instances where I found that it's actually really helpful to where if I'm away from my office or away from the pool area and something comes up, or I get informed of something that's going to be happening at the pool, I can text the staff on guard and they'll get a notification and be going, oh, okay. And they'll have that information, versus where I'm having to call the front desk and then they're trying to translate what I'm saying to the aquatics person, and they don't understand my lingo, and so they're trying to convey that to them. There's always a miscommunication between front desk and the lifeguards, and then the lifeguards end up calling me, what did you want? It's like, okay, so I've I'm still on the fence on it. I'm not 100% one way or the other, but I have seen the benefits of it, of communication with staff, just in a communication standpoint, not that they're like talking to me or texting back, but just getting information out.
I think it falls into anything else. I've seen lifeguards get distracted by their toes.
Yeah.
We've all had those. That lifeguard that's sitting there just mesmerized by their toes. And it's the same, it's a performance issue. You know, just if you're on your watch messing around, that's not good. If your watch is on your wrist and as you're rotating around, you take a quick glance and see that like you got a text, but you don't need to respond to it or whatever, that's fine. You're getting your steps in. Great. I love that challenge if it gets people up and moving around, because you know we can't do active things unless we get credit for it, right? That's the whole industry of Fitbits and everything else. So, all right. Next question. Journey asked about a cloudy pool. Couldn't see the bottom. Chemicals were all in range. It turned out a couple days later it was a chlorine feed issue, but you know, kind of talking to this group, I kind of wanted to discuss, you know, what are the things that you first start looking at when you start hearing about, or somebody says, the pool looks a little cloudy. So, thoughts?
I would agree, chlorine issue, that's the first thing that I would initially look at. Because for us, it's our chlorine feeder could get clogged. And so we're pouring a little extra acid down the feeder to make sure that the tube gets cleared up. Or else your pH is feeding wrong. So you check your chemicals first, but if that's all happy, I saw some people were commenting on there about, you know, your alkalinity and stuff, which for us usually isn't an issue, but I mean, it's worth checking for sure.
I've seen cloudiness come from backwashing not being done properly,
Yes.
a valve not getting completely closed, and so there's constantly a little bit of a backwash occurring that's getting pulled into the pool itself. I've seen alkalinity at one pool where it got really high and it just always looked a little hazy. I wouldn't say cloudy, it was hazy. pH plays into that. It's one of those deals that cloudiness is such a broad term that you kind of just have to go through your guess and checks and determine until you find the solution.
Mm-hmm. One of the best analogies I heard, it was from one of my pool directors. I think Christine, you know him, Gus Arsner, and he kind of has this way of speaking. He's just like, "Oh wow," and he's like, "That water looks tired today, doesn't it?" He'd walk up, "Doesn't that water look tired, kid? Looks just tired." And you know, that's that turbidity issues there. And I usually start filtration is where I go, you know, like are you actually getting your flow rate where it needs to be? Is your filter system sized? Because you know, the little pool that I ran that looked a lot like your pool, Chelsea, if we got too many people in the water, for like we were doing good on programming, the pool would just start going cloudy by the end of the day, and we'd actually have to supplement it with a clarifier. And then the chlorine, and actually it's that troubleshooting process of hold up. It's not necessarily something big. Like, let's verify all the little pieces are actually right.
Yeah.
You know, if you're testing your chemical reagents, you know, anytime you do a chemical test and you get a weird test, stop, rinse it out really well, and then try again.
Yeah.
Don't trust a first odd test and start panicking, or well, the controller says this. Well, let's make sure the water's actually flowing to the controller. You know, let's make sure your chlorine feeder is actually feeding. Let's try to diagnose this before we start going down the road of, like, you know, catastrophic brain eating amoebas taking over your pool.
And every pool that I've worked at has its own character. They just do things, and usually you get working at a pool long enough, you're a specific pool, not pools in general, specific pools, you'll find out, oh, this has a tendency to do this. And like, if this happens, you immediately know what happens when you start to figure out the characteristics of each pool. I know that was a characteristic of one of my last pools was that it was an outdoor facility, massive outdoor pool. And without fail, no matter how hard I tried, the first couple days, the pool was cloudy, no matter what I did. And it was likely due to the fact that it was such a large pool and there was a dry environment around it. And so even after I cleaned it and started filling, there was all these little dust and dirts and stuff that were in there. And then that first day, people, like, it'd be clear, perfectly clear. First day people get in there, stir it all up, and it got cloudy. And it's like, people are always like, it's super cloudy. It's like, give it a day. And it'll clear up. Sure enough, the next day or two, it'd be clear.
Yeah. I refer to the 5 bodies of water I take care of as my other 5 children. And they all have their own personalities. You know, like our splash pad is like the kid. It's the splash pad is the kid that comes home from college that if you don't keep an eye on them, they're going to throw a big rager and trash your house. And like, you're going to be cleaning it up for like 3 weeks. Because that's what it's like. If you do not stay on top of that splash pad, you're going to have a mess. But it's just, yeah, I reiterate what Kyle said. It's definitely, each one has their own characteristics and quirks, and you learn those as you practice more. All right, a couple more questions, and we're going to be right about 10 o'clock here on the West Coast. Randy asks about your best scanning drills for in-services. How do you guys help teach scanning?
So I have the guard, it's worked pretty well. I've done 2 variations of this drill. One is I will throw out X amount of diving objects that are brightly colored and within their zone. And I will have them face away from their zone. Then they'll turn around and I'll give them 30 seconds to count and to tell me how many objects they found. If they find all of them, great. Okay, moving on to the next step. The next step is actually, I will throw the same amount of objects out and then they have to respond to the color or object that I designate. And that's always an interesting one because they start looking so specific. Sometimes they miss it. Like they'll scan right over it because they're hurrying because they got to get in the water they got to reach the thing versus having 30 seconds to find it. They're having 30 seconds to get to it now. And so they rush their scan and they miss it sometimes. So it's a good scanning drill to tell them to slow down and observe the volume of water a little bit better than just going a quick deal. So
I thought you were going to be like super sneaky and do the whole thing where you were like, here's some brightly colored objects and here's some that blend in with the bottom of the pool. Now find them all.
Well, my objects are about this big, so it's hard enough to find. So I make it harder than real life. Like if I was getting a full size, like those silhouettes that blend more, that are a little bit more full size, I would do those. But it's a lot easier to find diving objects that are brightly colored about this big that I can just chuck periodically.
Our insurance suggested dropping a quarter in the water for like every shift and just making sure the lifeguard found the quarter.
Quarter?
Like a coin, a quarter, drop a quarter in the water and say, hey, there will be a coin in the water during your shift. You have to find it. I have not done it because my lifeguards do not care if there is a quarter in the water.
You got to get like a 20 down there to get them interested.
Yeah. I'm like, I really can't afford to do this. That's not going to work.
We had a lot of windows. And so one of the things that I think is really good when you're training is to have them be at not even the common stations that they're at, but to go around and be scanning from the different viewpoints around the pool and identify what they can't see. You know, we had some corners in the wave pool that you had to actively look at to see what was there. And there was other areas in our lap pool in the corners that the reflection on the top of the water would absolutely block anything that was underneath. So how are you going to see that? You need to get down and walk around that pool. You need to be guarding that whole pool. And I think just having that exercise of going to someplace they're not used to being and seeing it from a different perspective. And we did something, and I really can't remember now, we put a kickboard in front of their face, then pull it away and have them look, you know, and then a kickboard here and then look and see what had changed or what had happened. And that way it kind of, you know, it's that active looking, I guess you call it.
Yeah.
Active scanning.
I've also seen some drills where people talk about doing stuff in the top, the middle, and the bottom of the water. So having something that can float midway down. So we're not just looking at the bottom, we're not just looking at the surface, but teaching them to look at all the levels of the water. So sometimes I've seen where people have done specific things that don't sink all the way, but they sink midway. And that's where they're teaching their guards to also like just be a little more aware of all the levels of the water.
I had a mechanical engineer working for me. They fabricated different size of buoys with different lengths of rope and different visual acuity that they threw all over our pool. So some would be floating, like just enough of a lead to be in the middle. Some would be, 6 inches off the bottom. Some would be all over the place. It was just PVC pipe and rope and floats. So it wasn't anything, overly dramatic. My favorite scanning exercise is Where's Waldo books.
Oh, yes. I do those. I actually do those.
Yep. I bring those in my lifeguarding class because it is exactly how you should be scanning a busy pool.
Yes.
You're looking for those few characteristics. They're just everyone looks, splashing and everything else, but it's that look in those eyes that you're trying to train for. It's, the Where's Waldo books are my favorite.
You're the first person that has said that they do that, and I'm like, why is this not used more? Because it's exactly, you're right. It's the exact. It's a direct correlation there. And I tell, although I'm starting to run into the problem where I'm teaching lifeguard classes and I say, okay, we're going to do a Where's Waldo. And they look at me and go, what's that?
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't know what Where's Waldo is? How did you grow up in life?
Yeah. I have the books. I've bought like several of the books and I keep them with me. And my kids are like, Dad, I found a Where's Waldo book. Do you want it? Like, yes. They're hunting for Where's Waldo books, which just makes me that much more proud when they start lifeguarding. So they're going to be ready to scan for it. I never took driver's ed, but I would be curious to see the similarities between what driver's ed teaches people about situational awareness, because there's a lot of parallels between lifeguarding and driving. Where everything's fine until the minute it's not, and you have to react in a moment's notice. So I jokingly think I'm going to sign up for a driver's ed class to see if I can steal some ideas from there. The other lifeguard drill that I like to do for scanning is just have them tell me what they're seeing. Just stand behind them and be like, talk to me about what you're seeing. All right, now we're going to switch places and I'm going to tell you what I'm seeing. And I tend to actually like point as I'm going through it. So I'm sitting up there and I'm pointing and I'm talking about that person there. Oh, wait, that person's kind of splashing weird. Nope, they're fine. And just verbal stream of consciousness, which is hard because there's so much of it that it's like, it's the little things you don't think about when you've been doing it for, a number of years. So
I had a recent scanning drill happen to myself. I took my 4 small children to like the Children's Museum on a weekend on a busy summer day. And I thought I was pretty good at like seeing large crowds and moving bodies in pools. It's more of a parenting drill than a scanning drill, but it was like keeping track of your 4 people, and then with all I felt like I was in that gorilla video with the white basketball shirt people out. So yeah, children's museums, that's a scanning grill.
So we got to get more of these to be able to be mainstreamed for people. So, all right. Does anybody have any other questions or thoughts they want to toss out before we wrap it up for the day?
I enjoyed the field trip that Chelsea gave us.
It was fun.
You didn't get to see much of Oklahoma, but you know, I was like, I didn't want to miss the meeting.
Right? I got to figure out what I'm doing next week because my daughter's has a school field trip to the Oregon Gardens. So I got to figure out.
Fun.
I think I can facilitate it all from my phone, or I might have to hotspot my phone and my laptop. But we'll see. It's fun because I've been working on this like idea of remote meetings for like a decade. Like we've been trying to crack this egg, but Zoom has made it a huge difference to be able to do this from wherever. So, but yeah, it's thank you, Chelsea, for sharing that with us, and I hope, Kyle, your interview went well.
Oh, she said she could work 40 hours for me. I'm like, really? Okay.
Oh,
You got a lifeguard cert? You got a pulse? You pass about you
fog that spoon.
Yeah. Can you fog a mirror? Yep.
I'll say yes, please.
Yeah. So
yeah, I interviewed 4 this week, I think, and the one came in. He's like, "Yeah, I just want to work mornings." Hired.
Yeah.
Don't even care.
Yeah, exactly.
You got a positive cert you want to open? Boom.
That's my guard that's out there right now. He's about to get off. He's my 5 o'clock to noon guy because he wants 40 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you got it, dude.
Yep. So, all right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining in this week, and we will catch you all next time. All right.
Thank you guys.
Bye, everybody.